My name is Alana, and I use they, them pronouns.
And my name is Jessie. I use she, her pronouns.
And we're making menches.
Making Menches is your home for queer, anti-Zionist Jewish ritual, radical education, and community.
Hey y'all, it's Alana from Making Menches. We're having sort of like a meeting of minds recording today. There's lots of us on here. Maybe I'll just let people introduce themselves so you know who's talking at you.
I'm Jessie, the other half of Making Menches.
And from the shadow of persecution, I am Lexi from Torah for Trans Lives.
And I'm Jessie or Rocky Taylor, and I'm from our shared planetary homebody, figuring out everything else as I go along.
Wow, I need a better intro. That was awesome.
Well, how did we get here? Lexi reached out to us and was like, here's all this amazing stuff that I do. And we were like, cool, we want to do it with you somehow. And we decided to get together and record a little podcast. When we were talking to Lexi, we realized like, actually the Making Menches audience is not so Torah forward. Maybe that's a generalization. I'm sure many of you care deeply about the Torah and are engaged in Torah study, but we have a lot of folks who feel really alienated from Torah or not seeking us out for like Torah study and text study. So that kind of brought us to explore that, talk about how to make Torah a little bit more accessible and sort of locate ourselves in Torah in a way that I think many of us struggle to in this moment, especially.
Just from my own journey, I am not someone who is like poised to have a good relationship with Torah. Like I'm a queer trans leftist. When you think about like what Torah is in the world and you're not coming from the inside, it's like, well, you don't really belong here, Lexi. So I am someone who's had to like really put in a lot of effort to carve a home for myself inside of Torah. And I'm really excited to talk about like my own journey and what everybody else's journey here could look like. You know, what are some footholds we can get in this avalanche that we call our textual tradition?
On a related note, this may shock a couple of y'all. I hadn't read Torah in months. And I actually just a couple days ago, I was like, you know what? Let me read. It's been a long time. I don't know what's been going on. And of course, we're now on my favorite portion. And returning and reading it really had me like, wow, it's been a minute. And I had a flashback to when I told my rabbi that Teruma was my favorite portion. She was like, why? That's the most boring portion that there is. But returning felt really good and reminded me, like, why do I read anyways? To be in the midst of something. I'm not sure what I think of what that something is anymore, but there was something powerful about it and coming back at that time. And I feel you having to carve your own space out, I guess, the not really belonging. So coming up with your own relationship to it. I felt that very deeply when you said that, Lexi.
I do like a Torah study with my stepmom, and every week when I first started reading Torah, I felt so angry at it. Like, we used to joke, we've been doing it for 7 years now. My stepmom would be like, you hated everything in Torah. And I was like, yeah, everything seemed unfair, biased, homophobic, transphobic, like all these racist, slavery-based systems. Like, I was angry about Torah a lot, and that slowly over the years was like, okay, I'm getting the world that it was in, and I'm getting that these things are deeper, and who wrote this, and anyway, getting into the more like in the weeds stuff that I love, and I love reading Torah now, but the past year maybe have not felt very connected to Torah at all, and just felt like I was going through the motions, which like some years are like that, some years it's routine, but freaked out, fangirled so hard when Lexi emailed us and was like, I have been meaning to listen to Torah for Trans Lives. So full disclosure, first episode, Torah for Trans Lives, completely transported me back into, oh, I love Torah and this is what it's all about. So if you're sitting here and you haven't listened to Torah for Trans Lives yet, maybe pause this episode, go listen to that first one and then come back, because you're going to be like, wow, I'm back in.
Why did you even want to have a podcast talking about what you're talking about to begin with?
I started the podcast in January of 2025 when Trump got elected the second time. God help us all. And that first couple days, he was putting out all these really horrible executive orders, including a couple executive orders that were really, really bad for trans people. Just the horrors on that magnitude, that level of government oppression and violence aimed at me directly. It is an event on a mythic scale that I don't know how to engage with and retain my humanity and my sanity without something of equally mythic power. So I made a podcast where I try to encounter these real serious oppressions that my people, trans people, are going through, to encounter those things and those challenges from a resource that was given to us by people who lived through slavery and found their freedom, and passed down what we call the Torah and all the traditions that go along with the Torah to us, in part so that we can survive in a world that just is like that, where slavery and oppression happen. And so I'm just trying to make it through the day, man. And the podcast helps with that.
I want to say this because I want to reach out to people who maybe are in a similar place to myself. I often feel really under-resourced when it comes to text study and Torah and Talmud, and even in like the context of this call, I certainly would say I'm engaging with Torah the least. Like, I don't do consistent text study. I really feel largely unfamiliar with it in a lot of ways. And so I feel often like out of my depth in conversations with both like fellow anti-Zionist Jews and super Zionist Jews who use the Torah to like back up their views and values and use it in what I believe to be, at least from anti-Zionist Jews, like a really powerful way. And on the flip side of that, a really harmful way from Zionist Jews. I want to just reach out to people who feel similarly, who feel like, I don't understand even how to get started. Maybe I'm not even that interested in it. Maybe it doesn't interest me. But like, what is the importance of doing it? How can we engage in ways that are like actually accessible and feasible? And something that I've really appreciated in being in community with Rocky is you're like very expansive in the way that you interpret Torah, and like your approach to prompts about different parshas and the way that we like made silly memes about different parshas was made it like really accessible for me and sort of opened up a new way of understanding that I found to be really powerful. Zionists want us to not know the Torah. They want us to not feel connected. They want us to not be able to find ourselves in it. And I think it's important that we be able to say, look, this is where we are, and I know what it says, and this is why I believe like that what you're saying about it is incorrect or a misinterpretation. I want us to be able to say the Torah is mine too. The Torah is ours, and like feel confident in that sort of rebuttal when I bring it to the table. So when you're asking yourself like, why should I care about text and Torah, and like maybe it doesn't matter that much to me, but you know, being an anti-Zionist Jew really matters to you, I think it does matter if we want to like push back against the overwhelming tide of Zionism and Zionists.
It totally goes back to what you were saying about the power and the harm of Torah. Like, It's powerful when anti-Zionists use Torah and speak in Torah voices. They're really grounded. And it's harmful when Zionists use the Torah to justify the violence of the Israeli state and Israeli apartheid against Palestinians. That's both power. The Torah, it's so harmful because it is so powerful. I actually have a little bit of Talmud that I'd love to share with you all on exactly that topic.
Yes.
Because, like we were saying, the Torah is huge. You come to it and you assume that it sucks. A lot of us, you know what I mean? The first law in the list of like, these are some good laws for organizing your society is about how long you should hold a slave for. Like, how do you deal with this? So we need what I like to call footholds in the tradition or points of grounding. We can say, here's what I know is true and what keeps me in this. And then we can get into the hard stuff. You can't get into the hard stuff right away or you're going to drown. Okay, so this is from Tanis 7a, section of the Talmud. So we can have it in the show notes. Here's what it says. Tanya, it's taught. We have a tradition. Haya Rabbi Bena'a Omer. Rabbi Bena'a, who was one of the earlier rabbis, you know, we're talking like 1st, 2nd century over here. Haya Rabbi Bena'a Omer, here's what Rabbi Bena'a would say. Kol ha'osek b'Torah lishma, Toraso na'ases lo sam chaim. Anyone who engages with Torah for its own sake, that person's Torah study will become for them an elixir of life. Shin and Mar, as it is said, Eitz Chaim hi lamachazikim ba. She is a tree of life for those who hold on to her. Ve'omer, rifus tihi l'shorech. And it says, it shall be health for your belly button. Ve'omer, ki motzi'i matzah chaim. And it says, elsewhere in the Bible, for whoever finds me finds life. The Torah is an elixir of life. V'chol ha'osek b'Torah shelo lishma na'ases lo sama maves. But anyone who engages with Torah not for its own sake, the Torah becomes for that person an elixir of death. Shne'emar ya'arof kamatar likchi. As it says in Deuteronomy, may my doctrine drip like the rain. And there is no quote unquote dropping except killing, as it is said, and you shall break, i.e., the same word as drop, you shall break the neck of the heifer there in the valley. That's Tanis 7a. The Torah is an elixir of life and an elixir of death. That's exactly the power, right? Like, it's an elixir for sure. And it's either all the way up to 10 or it's either all the way down to 0. But it is like, those are the settings of Torah. We're not messing around when we study Torah.
The summation of it all together is like Torah is either an elixir for life or elixir for death. It depends on how you're reading it.
Yeah, and it depends. The difference is not like what's the content of your interpretation, but like, are you reading it for its own sake or are you reading it not for its own sake? And I feel like what we need to talk about is, what does that mean? What is for its own sake, or why does for its own sake lead to life? And why does not for its own sake study lead to death? And especially in the context of a world where a lot of people who study Torah are literally causing death to other people in Palestine. I don't know. What are you all thinking?
What's interesting about that text that's sticking with my mind right now is how many people are referencing Torah and Talmud right now who don't know anything about Torah and Talmud, but their first touch point is Netanyahu, or what the government of Israel says is in the Torah that justifies their plans. Or 2, newly, and we can decide how much we want to go into this, weird stuff coming out of the Epstein files about wars from, again, Jews against non-Jews that is going to happen, child sacrifices. Somebody close to me brought me a concern that the Talmud says when a child is 3 years old, they're ready for sacrifice. And I was like, where did you get that? Because it comes from something that I love, which is you have to wait 3 years before pruning a tree, before cutting your child's hair, like respecting the sanctity of like infancy, and that like things aren't consumable, you know, like they're not for production, as our children are not yours to consume or whatever. Like it promotes the exact opposite in my reading and the readings I've been taught. But the way the internet works and the way that people make these little sound clips for TikTok and things, like people are interpreting the Talmud and Torah and don't even have a touch point for Judaism, a lot of people. So there's like all of these things going around, like, well, the Talmud says, I'm like, did Jeffrey Epstein ever read Talmud? Like, I really doubt it. Like, I just don't believe that was going on. But there's so much confusion around it. So I think that is what is coming to me, is people are like, the Talmud says you can kill children. And I'm like, let's take 10 steps back and like, what is the Talmud? And we're not even like there culturally to have that conversation yet. So that's just stuff that's coming up in my mind.
I feel you on that. And I feel like a big part of it is, and this is something that honestly I want to talk about a lot more often, is like casual anti-Semitism. That's really what that is. People who have no understanding of what Judaism is, what Jewishness is, what Talmud is, what Torah is, what any of these things are in relationship to each other. And then they take all of that together, that ignorance, violence, really. And then they let the assumptions that they have that are grounded in nothing but more assumptions that are rooted in anti-Semitism, they let that drive what they think about any of these things. And it's really just like some of y'all have to see what you're doing, but don't care because you're anti-Semitic. And some of you just have no idea that that's what you're doing. And I'm seeing it more and more. And we were kind of talking about this recently with how we promote even making Mensch's writing workshops, where it's like, I feel like some people are scared to even attend because we even mention the word Torah in it. And it's heartbreaking, honestly.
I didn't know that was coming out of the Epstein files. The Torah references Baal, it references child side, it references a lot of things. And like, so does the Talmud reference a lot of things. And in my opinion, the Torah and the Talmud are about real life. So they're messy. I had a student in one of my Talmud classes who was like, at the end of class, was like, Lexi, how is it even possible for a person to say the Talmud says anything? She's like encountering people who are like, well, the Talmud says this like thing about women that's harmful. People use this phrase, the Talmud says, as like a cudgel to either bludgeon us or as Jews, or bludgeon us as anti-Zionist Jews, or shut down or incite violence against, like all these things. The phrase the Talmud or the Torah says does so much work. And like the truth is, like as a Jew, sometimes the Torah and the Talmud quote unquote say things, but really the Talmud is a conversation. It doesn't ever just say anything on its own. It is always part of talking to each other. You're always saying it in response to something, and it's almost never the end of the story. And I think that is part of what Rabbi Bena'a in our Tanis quote is getting at, maybe, when he says, if you study Torah not for its own sake, it becomes an elixir of death. Meaning, if what you're trying to get out of your Torah study is like a bottom line or a sound bite, or like, now I can finally prove that the Jews are the devil and control the media. If that's what you're trying to get out of your Torah study, that is not for the sake of Torah study. That is not for the sake of being in the conversation of Torah. That's for whatever your own purposes are. And that's ultimately an elixir of death, where we're going to end up with our necks broken.
The big part of it too is like, anybody who's approaching any of these texts from a dogmatic place, it's like, oh, you really don't understand what's going on. Because what you were just naming, Lexi, it's been thousands of years of conversation, not thousands of years as, oh, this is necessarily what is happening. This is what is true. It's no, we're in an ongoing dialogue constantly. So anybody who's approaching it like, oh, well, it says this, so it necessarily means this. It's like, oh, okay. We need to take several steps back because we're not even on the same page about what we're even approaching right now.
It's just the difference, I think, in the ways extremists always use religion to their own gain, right? It's the same way that, like, in Christianity or Catholicism, people weaponize the Bible all the time. But a liberatory theology perspective uses it completely differently because they're not reading it as a tool of oppression. They're not reading it as a tool of death. And the same thing goes for the Torah and the Talmud, like, and Jewish people. Like, when we engage with the text for what it is, which is a collection of writing by people thousands and thousands of years ago, and then a commentary on that text that's evolved over thousands and thousands of years, we know that there are going to be parts that feel misaligned or that we disagree with. I definitely don't want people's takeaway from this episode to be that we're being like, there's nothing wrong with things that are said in the Torah, because, like, no, there's crazy stuff that is in the Torah. That's what we're saying. Like, there's parts that don't make a lot of sense or that feel like misaligned with what we believe, but that's because it's like this living document. It's not fixed. It's not rigid. It's something that we are supposed to learn from and engage with and critique.
The way I was raised to like interpret Torah, and Alana, I don't want to speak for you, but you can chime in if this feels relevant to your experience too, is like being raised in a Reform Jewish congregation. Going to Hebrew school twice a week was my experience, but the Reform Jewish tradition in a lot of ways interprets Torah through a social justice lens, and oftentimes cherry picks certain Torah quotes or parsha to say, this is why we, organize and fundraise, and this is why we, are doing this charity drive, or this is why. And I see the intent, right? It's to instill values. Jewish education for Reform Jewish children is mostly about activism and taking action to heal the world, tikkun olam, like all of that, right? And what is misrepresented there is like the Reform Jewish tradition actually took the like social activism of it all from Black churches in the South, like during the civil rights movement, which is like so cool, right? Great legacy. You don't really get taught that that's where it comes from, that like you're just taught, oh, the Torah says like be good to each other and do this. And so I think my personal experience growing up thinking, I kind of get what it says in the Torah, like I know, without doing a regular Parsha study or like any sort of regular Torah exploration, gave me this false sense of confidence. Like, I know what's in there. Like I could talk about Torah with anyone. And I didn't really. So I'm not like you should force your children to read, Torah and Talmud every day kind of person. But like there is value to teaching Jewish children the full text, like the hard parts. You have to struggle with it, because when we oversimplify and say things like, oh, the Talmud says, or even the Torah says, because the Torah contradicts itself all the time, right? Like we give this like false reassurance that your own tradition, your own story. And while some of that is good, like to have confidence in it, if we don't encourage that, like going back and questioning and looking deeper into, or trying to find places like the Torah Studio, or, ways to engage with the text that are different than what we were taught, we have this idea of like, yeah, I know that's not for me, or like, yeah, I know what that says attitude from the Reformed Jewish perspective.
Or even that, like, when you do find those texts, they're heartbreaking. Like, when you find those hard texts and you are taught that the Torah is only good and simple, it can, like, totally be devastating for you. I mean, Jesse, I don't know, I'd be curious to hear if you are willing to share, like, when did that start to shift for you and what was it like?
A big point for me was learning about wiping out the Amaleks, the name. And that happened in confirmation class, 10th grade, because I was like still in it, still so committed to Judaism and what I thought I knew about like Reform Judaism and all that. That day we talked about like the Amaleks and wiping out the Amalek's name, and I was so surprised. I was just like, wait, we have a tradition in which we like refuse to speak about a certain people because they're so evil, and like we have to forget them. Like there's no like redeeming, like there was nothing. It's just pure like we hate them, don't even talk about them. They did great evil to us. no redemption, like end of story. And how we even like put people in our modern lineage, like of the Amaleks who are our enemies, like Hitler's an Amalek, you know, like all of these things where it's like, wait, that doesn't even make sense. Like the way that we kind of piece it together to be like, this makes sense. Like an Amalek is somebody that we like don't engage with. And it, because it rocked my world in the sense of like, wait, we hate people. Like how does this fit with the like Tikkun Olam, repair the world? Like, how do I make sense of this? It still stands out to me. Like, and we literally practiced like like smearing the name, like Amalek. Like, anyway, it was just very like visceral, like very physical of a memory to be like, maybe there's something more here. Like maybe I should read more into it. That is like still a touch point for me of like something's here that I was not taught and I'm supposed to just be okay with it. And it sits wrong like in my body.
I was first taught Torah in an Orthodox community. So that was my first relationship to Torah. It was mostly mandatory. And I will say that the community that I was in, they definitely didn't frame it as if it was simple. For context, the community that I was in, I was the only Black person around at all, whatsoever, at all. And so a lot of the questions that I would have and a lot of the concerns that I had, they were kind of swept under the rug. And then I was told, this is just what Torah is. This is just what you kind of got to accept. And I would push back against that. And because I was in such a closed community, I really thought that that is all that there was. And so I was like, wow, there's something I just must not be getting. I must not be understanding something if this is what it is and I'm just not getting it, or I have all of these questions. And it was when I started to kind of just spend more time with the Torah by myself. I spent years by myself when I left that community, just engaging with the text as I do with other texts. And it was through that and developing a deeply intimate relationship with the text, reading commentaries and learning how countless rabbis were approaching the text that I started to realize, oh, okay, this really is an ongoing conversation. And a lot of these questions and concerns that I have, not only are they normal, they're welcome. I just happen to be in a community that really wanted me to believe one specific story about Torah. And so that's kind of what it was like for me.
I feel like, and I mean, Jesse S. and I grew up in the same temple congregation, and so we have pretty similar, not identical, of course, but fairly similar experiences of like Jewish education. And I feel similarly like one of the first times I remember consciously engaging with like the Torah and being like, wait, what? Was also in confirmation class. Because I think that was the first time we were doing actual like text exploration, which just goes to show you like we've already been in Jewish education. I don't know. I went to preschool there, so I had been in Jewish education from 2 to 15 before I like started actually doing some like exploration and deep diving and interpreting. And mine was about like, does the Torah say that you're not allowed to get piercings or tattoos? They were like trying to make the Torah relatable and like something that we would want to like explore. And I remember like when the person who was teaching the class read the like part of the Torah that supposedly comes from, being like, oh wait, like, so that's actually kind of an interpretation of that. Like, it doesn't say that. It says something that we interpret to mean that. And I think that was the first time that I was like, it's not cut and dry. We're really just like making these interpretations and using them to our benefit. I think that's why it feels so important that we have like agency and actual engagement on our own with it, with the Torah and with Talmud, because that's the only way that we're going to understand that it's not cut and dry. And when people use harmful pieces of text, we can look at it and be like, wait, no, I know that's not what it says, or at least know like, hold on a second, I should explore that because I wonder if this is something that's up to interpretation. Instead of being like, damn, it says that. That sucks. I'm going to distance myself from it.
The truth is, sometimes it does say that thing. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it does say women are second-class citizens in so many words, and sometimes it does say trans people don't exist. And sometimes it does say that we should annihilate our enemies and ethnically cleanse the land of Israel. It says that a lot of times. And for me, the encounter with those moments is about resilience. Like, is that encounter going to destroy my relationship with this tradition that belongs to me? Or am I going to be able to stick with it and have some kind of repair in that space? And it's not like that's easy. I have a lot of essays about me trying to do that, like with transness in particular. It took me a long time before I could just kind of read Torah normally and like not having to put my psychological armor on every time on that point. And there's those things in it for all of us. And those political things that kind of just keep getting worse. And I don't know, I just believe that we can always have that healing with Torah and that there always is that life in there somewhere, even if the life is just like, oh yeah, that's real about my life, that people think trans people don't exist. And how nice that I can practice engaging with that idea on a text that can't actually hurt me, as opposed to a person who could really hurt me.
I think that like the read of resilience and engaging with things we disagree with or are even harmed by, and making space for the fact that there are lots of parts that can't be redeemed, and what do we do with that reality, feels really important. So many people who pull those pieces of text that do say terrible things and then say, well, look, it says this thing, don't interpret the rest of the text as fact. This goes back to our core point, which is, are you reading the text for the sake of the text, or are you reading the text for your own sake? And it's like people who are weaponizing the text in that way are reading it for their own sake because they're picking and choosing the parts that they want to carry with them and treating them as fact. Being able to take a critical lens and being able to be like, yeah, this is an old text and we live in a different time, and maybe I would have disagreed with it then, even, like, is a powerful place to be able to situate yourself.
The concept that because something is written down in a scroll from like 4,000 years ago, that just because it says that, we should then change our whole lives to do what it says, is totally bananas. It is a bananas thing. And we do a lot of that stuff, right? But also, we don't just do it because it says so. We would not do it if we just found a scroll, like if we just found the Dead Sea Scrolls and had not had Judaism for the intervening thousands of years, God forbid, and we just found the Torah in a jar somewhere. I don't think we would suddenly say, I know what I've been missing my whole life, and totally invent Judaism the way that it looks like today. That definitely would not happen. So it's never just that the text says so, so we have to listen to it. It is always, I'm part of a community. I have a relationship with someone who reads the Torah this way, or someone who does this practice that like is inspired by the text, and I can see them getting all this wisdom and life value and happiness or strength for organizing from it. Like there's always some person there behind why we take the actions we take, even if they're in line with what the text says. That's what I believe. And I think it's also kind of in what Rabbi Bena'a is saying when he says, if you study Torah for its own sake, it becomes an elixir of life for you. As it says, Motzi'i matzah chayim. Whoever finds me finds life. And I think what is happening there, maybe for Rabbi Bena'a, like I read the text to find the self behind the text, the one who spoke that text, and trying to understand that human or that being, that perspective. And that's where the life is, and not just in the words. And the whole trouble for us, like fundamentalists only care about the words, and the words say this, so we have to do them. And I think for me, and I hope like any healthy relationship with Torah always has a person at the other end of it.
As you were saying every word, I was nodding, and I was like, God is in this space. When I think of Torah, I think of Torah as a living document. And I too see the person behind it, where it's like, I'm not simply reading a text. I am in conversation with all of the various people who together put together this text that itself is alive. It's not just a series of words on a page or etched in stone. It's a living document that I'm engaging with. This is how I approach all texts. I approach all texts as living documents. I'm not only in conversation with, quote, the words, but there were literally countless minds. No one person wrote the Torah. It's a collection of so many ideas, so many concepts, so many stories, so many narratives that have been put together to tell all of these stories that can be interpreted in so many ways. And that's the beauty of it. When we approach it like that, like this ongoing conversation between us and literally countless people over thousands of years, it just becomes so much more rich, and there's so much more opportunity to learn so much about not only ourselves, but about our history, the world itself, just so many things.
I think something that can be really hard about Torah is either going in right with no context and not feeling confident, and going in with too much context and having the Torah in a voice that isn't yours and feeling like, okay, this belongs to someone else. This happened in a synagogue. It's not mine. And I would love, Lexi, for you to speak on like how you help people get past that. And what you're saying, Lexi, about this section is not like people will read the Torah for life and find God and be at peace and never have any more questions. Right? It's like you wrestle with it. That's our tradition too.
Like, in other words, it's alive, right? Is wrestling and is uncomfortable and trying to figure it out and is alive. You find life. We say rest in peace. Also in like, Jewish tradition, like Allah Shalom about someone who's dead, may like peace be upon her, peace be upon him. Being totally settled in everything, like once you've like got it figured all out, like that just doesn't exist in life. It's always evolving, it's always changing.
Also, I just want to note, I think the Torah is also not even just a human story. What one thing I love most about Torah is how many, however we want to say it, non-human, more than human kin are also so wonderfully represented in Torah. And that's really something that excites me most about it, is that we're not just getting human perspectives too. We're getting so many other beings. Like one of my favorite things is to read the book of Jonah from the perspective of the whale, for instance. We're getting so many different stories, and I love that so much.
A story that I have learned over time that actually is really powerful to me around like how Jacob becomes Yisrael, and like the meaning of that is to wrestle with God. And if we are talking about the text being connected to God, like does that not mean that like who we are as a religious group, who we are as Jewish people, is people who wrestle with the text, people who wrestle with the tradition that we've been given. So sometimes I think I get in my head around like, okay, if so much of the text like doesn't make sense, and why don't we just like, can we just stop? But then it's like, no, the whole point is having the ability to engage critically and wrestle with things that are really like hard to make sense of and that we maybe disagree with, and feel imperfect, and understanding who our ancestors are and also who we are as people through that.
I'm curious how you support people who want to learn Torah and Talmud when they feel the way they learn Torah is not in their own voice and that Torah does not belong to them. They have context, but it feels like it's not their own.
Jews don't let Jews learn text alone. We even have a whole word for it, chavrusa, which means friendship or fellowship. And it's your chavrusa is the person you learn Torah with or whatever text with. You sit down with someone and you read the words out loud and you talk to each other about it, and you talk back to the text about it, and you let the text talk back to you. And that's that triangle. The Torah Sugya, we talk about the Chavruta triangle, which comes from a book called The Philosophy of Chavruta. We've been saying this whole time, the Torah is a conversation, the Talmud is a conversation, it's all alive. And the only way to get there for yourself is unfortunately not by listening to either of our amazing podcasts, but it's by having a conversation over the text with somebody, by connecting to another person, to another form of life over the text, through the text, with the text. And when you do that enough times, you just suddenly one day sit down to learn with someone and you find that the text is speaking back to you as if it's its own person. There's not a magic recipe. It's an elixir, but I can't give you the recipe for it. You got to find it with other people. And the people you find that with are going to be the Torah for you. They're going to hold the Torah for you, and you're going to hold the Torah for them and make it come alive for them too. And that's just where the magic is.
Speaking of magic and conversing, what would you say to somebody who said, okay, I want to engage with Torah with people. I'm going to engage with Torah and ancestors. What would you respond to somebody who said that they were going to do that?
What comes to mind for me is I have this book from my 5 times great grandfather from the 1800s, who's known as the Tzaddik of Lazdai, like the righteous man of this small village in Lithuania that doesn't exist anymore because of the Nazis. Anyway, one of the things he wrote was when you're praying, you should imagine for yourself that in front of you are all of your ancestors and all of the people from the stories in the Torah delighting in the Garden of Eden. And text study is a form of prayer in the sense that when we do it, we are imagining different worlds and putting ourselves in those worlds. And so I think we absolutely should be having our ancestors in mind and in heart and feel that they are present for us and reading over our shoulders when we are learning these texts, because it's the whole universe that is happening at the same time when we study Torah. There's no past, present, or future. It's all there.
I'm loving how we bring in so many outside things to Torah and Talmud study, whether it's pop culture, whether it's like witchy things, whether it's personal practices from other traditions. Something that has been a huge point of connection for me and my stepmom when we do Torah study is like sci-fi. Like we don't have a lot in common politically, but we can be like, oh, this is just like that one movie where this happens, or something, because like you're saying, like this timelessness and timefulness of Torah where like everyone is together and learning from each other at the same time, like all of that, it like breaks our understanding of the universe, the way our brains process time. And so I think it can be so exciting and empowering for people to know that that weird thing that came to mind when you were reading the text is relevant. It's all a part of it because everything is in Torah and Torah is in everything, right?
And there's so much magic in Torah. Like, it's so magical. Not only is it relevant, it's like back then they were doing the magical witchy stuff too.
King Shaul goes to the Witch of Endor and summons Samuel's dead spirit, and he shows up and he talks through her mouth, and like, Moshe and Aaron to do the plagues, like they're like throwing dust in the air and chanting incantations, and he's got a magic staff. And it's like, really, that's a fantasy novel.
Last spring, I was in this writing class called Writing Midrash with Alicia Ostreicher, who's this incredible poet. And when we were in the class, I'm going to read you what the exercise was. She said to pick a character from the Torah and be their stenographer. Be the pen that writes down what your character wants to say, something about their life and experience that nobody knows that they want to tell you about. But you have to include the phrases, I remember and I wish, and then you have to say a color. Can I read y'all the very short poem that I wrote? And then can y'all guess which character that I wrote from the perspective of? All right, so here's the poem. I wish you could feel this heat. Maybe you do. Still, I remember you, coated in crimson. You, who never learned my name. Still, you, with so many questions. Still, you never asked about my pain and what did consume me. Who was I being the stenographer for?
I want to say Joseph because I love Joseph, and Joseph does a lot of pain, but nobody cares about Joseph's feelings.
I'm struggling here. Is it Lilith? We never even get her name in the Torah. So like she doesn't appear.
I'm going to tell y'all the burning bush.
Wow.
I should have guessed that it would have been like a plant earth kin and not a human kin. I was like, should have gotten in your mind a little more. I love that.
And that's the beauty of Torah. That's the thing. No matter what topic we bring up, somehow there's also someone who's not human kin that's in Torah experiencing this. Lexi, who are some non-human kin in Torah that you feel connected to and why?
I have been thinking about the embroidery on the Mishkan, on the tabernacle lately. That it's
Yes.
like the embroidery on the innermost part of the Holy of Holies is like embroidered angels in gold and red and blue and purple threads, and they're facing each other, and it's like just angels surrounding angels, extravagance surrounding extravagance surrounding extravagance. It's really going all out on this home, and then the home talks to you. I'm into that.
Honestly, you just shook me because you just did something so cool to me where it's like the embroidery, but even then, we're still talking about snails. We're still talking about all of these different, more than human kin who, without them, we wouldn't even be able to dye the fabrics and textiles and linens that make the embroidery.
We often think about all the materials that we would have had to bring with us in the wilderness to make this home for God, but like also all the animals and other beings who are with us. The wool that was given by the sheep just as freely as we gave our earrings. I imagine like the snails who made the dyes.
I just think this is representative of what there is to gain if you read Torah and engage with it and like challenge yourself to engage with it from your own perspective. Where do you find yourself? Where do you find your own values? How do you engage with the Torah through your own lens? And like, how can the people around you, when you engage in it with them, sort of inspire you to see it differently? Jesse does a great job connecting different parsha to different texts that currently exist. And let's be creative, people. How can we be creative? How can we engage with it creatively? Like, what can we do with Torah? How can we conceptualize Torah in ways that are not just like, I'm going to sit down and read it, and what I see on the page is what I get automatically?
When you're reading Torah, like never ever give up your point of view and never ever compromise on the values that you know are the truth. And even Rabbi Bena'a is doing that, right? He's saying, like, if you study Torah not for its own sake, it's going to be an elixir of death, as it is written. And this is like a little bit hard to get across, but the verse he quotes to prove that this kind of not for the Torah's own sake Torah study makes it an elixir of death is a verse that means just on its face, basically, my Torah will drop from the sky like rain, which in its context is like a really nice thing. It's like, the quality of mercy is not strained, it droppeth like the gentle rain from heaven on the place beneath, like this beautiful vision of like wisdom falling from heaven in the form of water. And Rabbi Bena'a is like, that's what you think it means. But actually, when is the Torah an elixir of death? It's when you read these beautiful verses about Torah dropping like rain and abuse them for the purpose of killing. And he's got this whole thing about like actually that verb dropping like rain elsewhere means dropping like killing, like you drop someone. And so, depending on how you come to the Torah will speak to you. Either that verse is like one of the most beautiful moments if we find Torah in the natural world and it comes to us and we just have to be open to it and receive it, or you could equally well read it as like, my Torah is going to kill you, and that's what it's for, is for killing people. And so there's never a moment where there is no agenda, where there is no one reading the text with a perspective. So you have to stick to, and this is the most important foothold, your own experience is in the Torah already, and you just have to insist on the Torah speaking that perspective.
Lexi, have you read Soul of a Stranger by Joy?
I
What are your thoughts on that text?
Soul of a Stranger by Joy Layden. Joy Layden, by the way, full disclosure, is one of my most treasured mentors. We try to have tea every Friday.
Oh my gosh. I took a writing class with her last year at Beit Cajonet.
Joy Layden's a national treasure. What can I say? With respect to what we've been talking about in this conversation, like Joy's project in that book, I think, is to take her own lived experience of God, and of God as in many ways absent and illegible and mysterious to us as human beings, and her own experience of transness as illegible and invisible to the people around her when she was growing up. And then just to take those experiences and go to the text with those and ask, okay, if that's what God is, and if that's what being trans is, then what's this story about Abraham encountering God and God telling him, go leave your home and go to this land you've never been to before? What does it mean to be like Jonah and run away from God's mission, given that for Joy, that God is this ungraspable thing that doesn't seem to exist in the world? And I mean, that's the whole thing. It's obviously also shaped my perspective on what we do with Torah and how, like, we as queer people find ourselves in Torah, is just to say, my experience of God is real. My experience of the world is real. And what does it mean to take the Torah as if it already thinks what I think about it?
Where are your favorite places to find yourself in Torah?
I love astrology. I led the astrology in Torah, which is like a little bit hidden, but like there's this whole section in the middle of Deuteronomy in chapter 18 that's like, don't do this kind of magic, don't do this kind of fortune telling, don't try to predict the future, but be whole with Hashem your God, which just is a beautiful sentence on its own. But it's also like, yeah, also like astrology is real, but maybe don't invest too much in it. I've like turned this into a whole idea about like what transness is, and the way that like the stars are signs that predict our future, the way that like, you know, the way our body's born is a sign that predicts our future, and just like how do we deal with that is like a thing that's real and that happens, but also we're trying to have a relationship with a being who transcends all the signs and all the reasons. And my latest project is to try to find myself in like Leviticus and like all these laws and complex details about the sacrifices. And I have not yet been successful, but I would really like that stuff to speak to me. So I'll have to come back on the podcast and let you know how that goes in like 5 years.
Jesse, I'm curious where you find yourself in the Torah as well.
Oh my goodness. When Aaron is silent, when his sons are murdered by God, and then, you know, his heart is, quote, of stone. That was what started my exploration of specifically who are the stone kin of Torah. Where I find myself is with the stone kin, Jacob's pillow, with Aaron's heart of stone, with the tablets, with the mountain itself or their self. I find myself with stone kin in Torah. I think they are so misunderstood. I think they are such complex archives of history. And as strong as they are, they're also so fragile, especially when you bring strong waters into the mix. That's where I find myself. So not a specific place, but wherever there are stone kin, I am there. And that is actually why my chosen name is Rocky.
If someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, wait, maybe I was wrong about this whole Torah thing, like I should give it a go. Does anyone have recommendations on how people should get involved, maybe places they can seek out guidance, groups they can join.
Just pick it up and read. No, I'm so serious. Pick it up and read and approach it like you would approach your favorite book. Pick up the Torah like you would pick up your favorite book. Maybe grab a highlighter, maybe grab a pencil, maybe grab some of those little sticky flag things and approach it like you would approach your favorite text, knowing this isn't necessarily truth, but this is a collection of words and ideas that can impact my life. And if for some reason they don't impact my life, they necessarily impact the world. And that's the thing I say to a lot of people, especially now that I'm applying to divinity school. They're like, I just don't understand. And it's like, you may not understand, but guess what? There are billions of people, and there are people in positions of power who are using these texts to help rule the world. Learn them. Just because you read them doesn't mean you have to believe everything that they say. Learn them. Even if you pick one passage and unpack that one passage, deconstruct that one passage, get to know one specific passage even, just pick it up and go from there.
If you can do that, I don't have anything more to give you. That's awesome. And if you also want a more social experience, I mean, the Torah studio where I work, we have classes 5 days a week. We're just starting the spring quarter, the middle of March. We've got Parsha study, we've got Talmud study, we've got Zohar, we've got Hasidus. So many ways to plug in. And like I said, learning Torah is part of a conversation that comes alive for you with other people. And we're online, so you can come learn with us literally wherever you are.
I love that. We also have a deep love for the Shalmala folks who run a amazing queer virtual yeshiva. All right, y'all got the Torah studio, you got Shalmala. There are places that are doing this work and doing it from a values aligned perspective. We'll try to add other places we think of in the show notes, but also like, yeah, I don't know, hit up your bestie and be like, I'm really trying to commit to this practice. Want to do it with me? Like, Jessie S does this with her stepmom, and like for 7 years. That's so wild. I didn't realize it had been 7 years. It doesn't need to be in a big class if that feels daunting at first. Like Jesse Taylor said, engage with it however feels accessible to you. If that's an individual practice, if that's with your homie, if that's with ancestors, if that's in the Torah studio or Shalmala class, like whatever it may be.
I also want to shout out my rabbis online offering, the Jewish Liberation Theology Institute online. I've been studying Torah with my rabbi for about 6 years now. It's all online. It is explicitly anti-Zionist, anti-ableist, anti-racist, and queer. And I recommend that as well.
Hell yeah. We'll link all this in the show notes so you can find it. I do think it's powerful. Like the fact that there's more than one group of people doing like anti-Zionist, liberation-focused, queer Jewish learning is pretty bonkers and pretty awesome, and just like representative of a long tradition of that work happening. Don't let Zionists erase it. Okay, y'all, this has been so juicy. I've loved just listening to all of you talk, and I hope that if you're listening, you've gleaned something, or even if it's disagreement. I hope that there's been something for you here. Feel free to let us know what you're thinking, and if there's more you want us to work through.
Thank you all so much for bringing me on. This is so fun, and I love that I just got to spend the last little chunk of time bringing the Torah to life with you all.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks for listening to Making Mention. Please consider supporting our work by funding us. You can find the donation link on our website, makingmenches.com. You can follow us on Instagram at Making Menches. We host monthly Shabbats both in person and online, so make sure to sign up for our newsletter, which is on our website, to get updates.
Making Mentions, the podcast, is produced by Alana Lipkin and Jesse Sander. Intro music is by Nate Sander. Editing by Jesse Sander.